Yo, Mr. T here. Today we're going to be going over how to factor trinomials, i.e. factoring trinomials. Okay, so there's a couple things before we get started on factoring trinomials that we want to go over, that we want to understand. First of all, a trinomial, remember, is tri means three different terms. Okay, so when we're talking about a trinomial, we are talking about an expression that has three different terms to it. So for instance, if I looked at the expression x to the second minus 2x minus 24, notice that there are three different terms in that expression. We have the x to the second term, we have the 2x term, and then we have the 24, the minus 24 term. Okay, so when we talk about factoring trinomials, we are talking about something that has three different terms in it. Okay, and over here to the left, I just want you to write this down. The general look of a trinomial is in the form of ax squared plus or minus bx plus or minus c. This right here is what we call the standard form of a trinomial, where a, b, and c just represent numbers. So a represents a number, b represents a number, C represents a number. So A, B, C represent whole numbers. Okay, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. Or negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, etc. Okay, so if you'll notice, and today what we're going to do is we are going to, every trinomial that we're going to learn how to factor today, the value of a will always be 1. So if we go back up here to x to the second power minus 2x minus 24, the a value would be 1. Why is it a 1? Well, because the a value is the number in front of the x squared. Okay, the b value is the plus or minus number in front of the x part. So in this case, the b would be negative 2. And then the c value is the number, it's the plus or minus number at the end, which we call the constant. That's why it's called c for constant. It's the value that has no variable next to it. In this case, c would be negative 24. Okay, if I went over to x squared minus 5x plus 6, the a value would be positive 1. Why is it positive 1? Well, because there's a 1 in front of the x squared. The b value would be negative 5. Okay, the b value is the number always in front of the x part, and then the c value would be 6. The c value is your constant, that's what c stands for, and it's the number that has no variable by it. Okay, you guys? So in all of the problems that we're doing today, every single one of them is going to have an a value, which is 1. And we're going to learn a certain strategy on how do you factor a trinomial when the a value is equal to 1. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw you something right now that is going to make no sense to you at all, but I want you to just go ahead and draw it, okay? So if I have an expression of x squared plus bx plus c, that will factor into two parentheses, and both of the parentheses will have an addition symbol in them. And I'll show you what this means and how you fill it out as you go. But this is stuff that you do need to know, okay? And like I said, it's not going to make a lot of sense to you right now, but it eventually will. If I have an x to the second power plus bx minus c, then when we factor that, we're going to get two parentheses. One of the parentheses will have a plus, the other parentheses will have a minus. Okay, if I have an x to the second power minus bx minus c, then that will factor into two parentheses. One of the parentheses will have an addition symbol. One of them will have a subtraction symbol. And then lastly, basically what I'm doing is, and you don't know it, I'm giving you the four possibilities when we factor trinomials. If I have a trinomial in the form of x to the second minus bx plus c, then that would factor into two parentheses, two quantities. All right, so if you have an x squared minus bx plus c, what's going to happen is it's going to factor into two quantities, and each quantity is going to have a subtraction sign in it. Okay, so this is going to be, don't forget this stuff right here. It's a good thing to have committed. Well, if it's not committed to memory, you should be pretty dang close to committing it to memory, because this is going to come in handy as we start factoring. Okay, so here's the process to factor a trinomial. Let's go ahead and let's jump up here to x to the second power minus 2x minus 24. So here's the kind of way we're going to do it. So the first thing is a trinomial will always factor into two sets of parentheses, and both parentheses will actually turn out to be binomials. Now, let's look at the x squared minus 2x minus 24 here. Notice it is what we call a minus trinomial, okay? Why is it a minus trinomial? Well, look right here. We got a minus. We have a minus. So we go down to our chart here, and we see the one that has the minus and the minus, which is the third one down. And it tells you that the first parentheses is going to have an addition symbol in it, and the second parentheses is going to have a subtraction symbol in it. Okay, so we know going from the chart, and I'm going to go ahead and number these off right here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. This x squared minus 24, 2x minus 24, it's a minus minus. Okay, so that's number 3. So the first parentheses is going to have an addition symbol. The second parentheses is going to have a subtraction symbol. Okay, now here's what we're going to do. You are going to put numbers here and here. So there's going to be numbers right there, and at the beginning of each factor, each quantity is going to be an x. Why is it going to be an x? Well, because x times x is x to the second power. Okay, now here's how you're going to find out what numbers you put at the end. You're going to go to the c value. So remember, the c value here is 24. And then you're going to go to the b value, which is -2. And what you're going to do is you are going to make a little table, and you are going to put the c value at the top. Your table is going to have two columns. Your c value you're going to put at the top. So you're going to put a minus 24 there. Why minus 24? Well, because it's a minus 24. And then your second column is going to be your b value. Okay. Now, whatever you put in your first column, that's going to stand for multiplication. Your second column is going to stand for addition. And here's how you're going to figure this out. You are going to make a list of all the pairs of numbers that you can think of that multiply together to make -24. -1 times +24. +1 times -24. What else? Ooh, -2 times 12. 2 times -12. -3 times 8. 8 times -3. What am I missing? 6 times, or -6 times 4, and 4 times -6. Okay, so you make all the list of pairs of numbers that multiply to make your c value. Notice my c value is -24. And now one of these pairs will add to make the -2, your b value. So you go down and you say, okay, which one of these pairs is -1 plus 24? Will that add to make -2? No. How about 1 plus -24? Will that add to make -2? No. If I go all the way down my list to -6 plus 4, notice -6 plus 4 adds to make -2. Okay, so you have found your two numbers. It's x plus, which number is the plus? 4, and x minus 6. So your factors, when I factor the trinomial x to the second power minus 2x minus 24, it would factor in to x plus 4 quantity times x minus 6 quantity. Okay, let's move on. How about the next one? X squared minus 5x plus 6. So let's take a look at it and which number. So we know that a trinomial is always going to factor into two sets of parentheses, and this is a minus plus trinomial, which follows number 4 in my list. Okay, notice number 4 is x squared minus bx plus c. So this is a number 4 is a minus plus, which means both of my factors are both going to be subtraction right here. Okay, so I'm going to have a minus and a minus in my factors. So my variable is an x to the second power. So at the beginning of each factor, I'm going to have an x and an x, because x times x is x to the second power. And now I have to figure out what numbers go after the subtraction sign in each one of my quantities. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, that's where I'm going to go to what we call the factor chart. Okay, take the c value. So on the first column, you put your c value. Second column, you put your b value. My c value is positive 6. That's my c value. My b value is negative 5. Okay, so my b value is negative 5. And remember, c value is for multiplication. B value is for addition, and here's how you figure out what numbers, what your magical numbers are, what your factorable numbers are. You say to yourself, okay, I'm going to make a list of all the pairs of numbers that multiply to make positive 6. 1 times 6. Negative 1 times negative 6. 2 times 3. Negative 2 times negative 3. Okay, that's it. So there are 4 pairs of numbers that multiply to make positive 6. One of those pairs are going to add to make negative 5. Which one is it? It's the negative 2 plus negative 3. That adds to make negative 5. You have your two numbers. Okay, so it's x minus 2, x minus 3. So there's your factors, you guys, for the trinomial. So the trinomial x to the second power minus 5x plus 6 would factor into quantity x minus 2 times quantity x minus 3. All right, let's go down, and we're going to skip down. So that was page 29. Let's go to page 30. Okay, and let's go ahead and let's do 2 more so we get the idea of how to do this. Let's go to the top of page 30, top left, x squared plus 16x plus 63. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, this is a trinomial. So the rule is a trinomial is always going to factor into two quantities. Each quantity will be a binomial. Okay, and this trinomial is what we call a plus plus trinomial. See, plus plus. Go back to your chart up here. Which number was the plus plus trinomial? That was number 1. So that means each quantity, when I factor, is going to have an addition symbol in it. So a plus plus trinomial factors into a plus and a plus. Okay, so we go ahead and we go to our factors, and each one's going to have an addition symbol in it. I'm going to start each quantity with an x. Why an x? Well, because I have that x squared right there. And x times x is x squared. And now I have to fill in numbers after each addition symbol. So how do I do that? Well, I take my c value, which is 63. I take my b value, which is 16, and I make my factor chart. Okay, where do you put your c value? First column or second column? The c value always goes in the second column. First column, I mean, positive 63. Your b value, positive 16, always goes in the second column. And then remember, the way it works is I have to find two numbers. They have to multiply to make my c value 63. And those same two numbers have to add to make positive 16. Okay, so now I'm going to make a list of all the numbers that multiply to make 63. Okay, 1 times 63. 3 times 21. 9 times 7. Now you may be saying to yourself, Mr. Trutna, How come you didn't do the negatives? Well, I didn't do the negatives because I know my answer is plus plus. So I'm only dealing with positive numbers, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. So which one of these pairs of numbers, 1 and 63, 3 and 21, 9 and 7, which one adds to make my b value 16? That's 9 and 7. 9 plus 7 is 16. So you have your factors. So I have x plus 9. I have x plus 7. So the quantity x plus 9 times the quantity x plus 7 are the factors of the trinomial x squared plus 16x plus 63. Next one, factor x squared minus 12x plus 27. That's a trinomial. So what kind of trinomial is it? Well, notice it is a minus plus trinomial. So let's go up to our chart. Which one from this chart here, which one's the minus plus? So the minus plus is number 4. So that means both of my factors are going to have a minus sign in them, a subtraction sign in them. So a minus plus trinomial factors into a minus and a minus factors, okay? So when I draw out and I set up factoring, I know that a trinomial is always going to factor into two quantities. Both of the quantities will be a minus and a minus. So I'm only dealing with negative numbers here. Okay, so what do I start each quantity with? An x. Why an x? Because we have x times x gives me my x squared. And then I make my factor chart. Okay, remember I take my c value, which is positive 27. I put that in the first column. That's going to be what I'm going to multiply to make. Then I take my b value, which is minus 12, and that's going to be what my two numbers are going to add to make. Okay, so since I have a minus minus for my factors, that means I'm looking for two negative numbers that multiply to make positive 27. Negative 1 times negative 27. Negative 3 times negative 9. If you're not very good with your multiplication facts, you're going to struggle a little bit with figuring out this t-chart. Okay, and that's it. There are only two negative numbers that multiply to make positive 27. All right, and one of them will add together to make negative 12, and that's negative 3 plus negative 9, which is negative 12. So I have my factors. X minus 3 is one quantity. X minus 9 is the other quantity. So the trinomial x to the second power minus 12x plus 27 would factor into quantity x minus 3 times quantity x minus 9. Next one here, let's do this one. Let's do x squared plus 2x minus 63. Okay, that is a trinomial. What kind of trinomial is it? It is a plus minus trinomial. So let's go up to our chart. We're looking for a plus minus trinomial. Plus minus is number 2. So a plus minus, when I have my two factors, I'm going to have a plus and a minus in my two factors. Okay, so I set it up. Hopefully you're starting to get the hang of this. All right, so I'm going to set this problem up. Equals, I'm going to draw my two parentheses. One of them is going to be a plus. One of them is going to be a minus. Each quantity will start with x, because x times x would give me my x squared. Now I'm going to make my factor chart to find my answers. Now notice the numbers are plus minus, so that means when I'm finding two numbers, one of them is going to be positive, one of them is going to be negative. Okay, that's what that plus minus stands for. So I go to my c value. My c value is negative 63. That's going to be what my two numbers are going to be to multiply to make. Then I take my b value, which is positive 2, and positive 2 is what my two numbers that I'm looking for are going to add to make. Okay, so now I'm going to find two numbers. The two numbers have to multiply to make negative 63. One of them has to be positive, one of them has to be negative. Negative 1, positive 63. Okay, those don't add to 2. So let's try positive 1 and negative 63. Those don't add to 2. Okay, so I got to keep going. Negative 3, positive 21. Doesn't work. They don't add to 2. How about positive 3, negative 21? Doesn't work. They don't add to 2. Okay, how about negative 7 times positive 9? Okay, that multiplies to make negative 63, and notice negative 7 plus 9, that adds to 2. So I have my two numbers. So it's x plus 9, x minus 7. Why does the 7 have to be the minus? Because the 7 is the negative number here. So when I factor the trinomial x to the second power plus 2x minus 63, I get quantity x plus 9 times quantity x minus 7. Okay, let's do one more. Notice in this last one we're going to do x squared plus 4xy minus 96y to the second. This is the first one where I had a variable at the very end of the problem here, okay? So what are we going to do with this one? Well, you kind of do it the same way. All right, so let's go ahead and first of all, notice this trinomial is a plus minus, just like the previous one. So a plus minus would fall under number 2. So my factors are going to be a plus and a minus. Okay, so when I set up the factor here, I'm going to have my two quantities. One of them is going to be an addition. One of them is going to be a subtraction. Okay, and each one is going to start with x. Why x? Because I have x times x is x squared. Now, because I end in y squared, that means each quantity is going to end with a y. Now, next to the y, I have to come up with a number. Okay, and that's where I make my factor chart. All right, where I take my c value, which is negative 96. I'm going to have to find two numbers that multiply to make negative 96. And then I take my b value, which is positive 4. And those same two numbers are going to have to add to make positive 4. But because my factors are a plus and a minus, when I find my two numbers, they have to be a positive and a negative. Like positive 96 times negative 1. Well, that's not going to work because you add that up, you don't get 4. Okay, so we're going to have to kind of play with numbers here. And just for the sake of time commitments, we're going to go ahead and we're going to skip ahead. And I'm going to show you what the two numbers are. The two numbers are positive 12 times negative 8. Notice positive 12 times negative 8 is negative 96. And when I add positive 12 with negative 8, that gives me my positive 4. Okay, so I have a positive 12, so it's going to be x plus 12y. And then I have a negative 8, so my other factor is going to be x minus 8y. So when I factor the trinomial x to the second power plus 4xy minus 96y to the second, I get quantity x plus 12y times with, multiplied with quantity x minus 8y. Okay, so there's 22 minutes, you guys, of examples. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 good examples of how to factor trinomials. All right, see ya.